Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 25th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said, "Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, 'Look, here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him.' Then all those bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, 'Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out.' But the wise replied, 'No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves.' And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the banquet, and the door was shut. Later the other bridesmaids came also, saying, 'Lord, Lord, open to us.' But he replied, 'Truly I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour.'" The Gospel of the Lord. So if my biblical commentaries are any indication, I am supposed to be extolling the benefits of staying awake and being prepared. And if my biblical commentaries are any indication, I am also supposed to explain how this parable in Matthew is about the coming of Christ and the need to remain faithful. But you know what I just can't get past? The 5 self-absorbed, nasty, mean girls in this parable who are supposedly the wise ones. Not only are they unwilling to share their oil, they send their friends off into the night to find their own oil, and they don't unlock the door when their friends return so they can come in and join the party. These women are perfectly content to secure their place at the Feast of the Lamb with no regard for anyone else. And I sort of have this image in my head of them tripping over their fancy shoes and ridiculously fawning all over the bridegroom because they want to impress him. And they are willing to do that at the expense of others. And these are the wise ones in the parable. And I just really can't get on board with that. And you can call me a heretic if you would like. There's also another problem with this parable. Most obviously, the fact that the bridegroom doesn't open the door either, making him seem like a real catch. But we'll get to that in a minute. Traditional interpretations of this parable seem to praise behavior that runs counter to the central message of Jesus: radical inclusivity and compassion. So I am not going to rewrite the parable, although I really want to. But I do want to break it down and offer a different entrance point into the story. So first, the basics. We have 10 women, all with lamps lit, all of whom are anxiously awaiting the bridegroom, and they all fall asleep. And finally, when the bridegroom finally gets there, they all spring into action. But 5 of the lamps are about to go out, which means that the amount of light they would be able to shine on the path of the bridegroom would be greatly diminished. Right? If you think about this, 5 lamps with filled oil provide no more light than 10 lamps half filled with oil. In fact, if the mean girls had shared their oil, there would have been more light to shine on the bridegroom's path. But from the mean girls' perspective, it's all about themselves, not the bridegroom, and most certainly not about anybody else. Again, I have many issues with this, with our traditional interpretation of the parable, but another obvious piece that we seem to overlook. It says, "Look, here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him." In this parable, and it's not true in every parable, but in this parable, they do know the time. The time is imminent. It is upon them, and the 5 mean girls choose to send the others out into the darkness. Maybe they want him all to themselves. Maybe they're just there for the party. Maybe they're afraid of being left in the dark. Their lamps are lit, but their vision is limited. But I don't actually want to talk about the mean girls. I said I would like to offer an alternate entrance point into the parable. So let's talk about the other women in the story. The ones who don't bring extra oil. The so-called foolish ones. The bridegroom is on the horizon, and they go out into the darkness. I mean, why would they do such a thing? Now, the usual way we shame these women into being inferior bridesmaids is by pointing out what seems so obvious. They are utterly unprepared. Procrastination and poor planning is their downfall. I mean, what egregious sinners they are. So I'll just point out the obvious here. If procrastination and mismanagement of daily life are disqualifiers for the kingdom, well, then I am doomed. I'll also point out that one of the most foolish things one can do when dealing with Jesus' parables is to think that the obvious is the actual point. Nothing Jesus ever says or does is that easy. I actually think these women are the most hopeful and trusting and faithful of the lot, despite their idiocy. And yes, I know that is in direct contrast to every parabolic interpretation you have ever heard, and many scholars might disagree with me. However, if you know me well, you'll know that that's never stopped me from challenging a parable before. So we're just going to go with my train of thought for a moment to shed some additional light on this grim story. Why would these women not show up with extra oil? I mean, they didn't think they were going to need it, right? They were so sure and so confident that they just didn't bring more. They had placed all of their hope in the bridegroom. And yeah, hindsight is 20/20. They should have prepared more. It's also true that they trusted that their friends would help them out. But ultimately, neither of these are my main curiosities of the story. My main curiosity is, so did they find any more oil? Our parable doesn't say. You know, out there in the dark, from whence the bridegroom came, did their lamps get filled with oil so that they could make it back through the darkness, so that others could follow them and find their way to the party? My reason for asking this question is because if there's any truth to oil symbolizing faith or hope, then, I mean, can you really run out of faith or hope? See, here is the rub. My ability to trust and my ability to hope and my ability to have faith is limited. Just as the oil is limited for all 10 of these women, 5 just happen to have a deeper well from which to draw. But sometimes I am pretty sure my lamp is about to go out, or is darn near empty. As Christians, we ground our belief in the truth that faith and hope are gifts from God, that God grants those to us despite our abilities. So I'm sorry, but it is God's job to fill my lamp. And I know that sounds spiteful and somewhat pompous, but as my hope wanes and my light begins to dim and darkness descends upon the planned wedding feast, I cannot help but think that God has tarried too long, and in the meantime, the world has dug its own grave. The carnage laid out last Sunday in Midland, Texas, is just one of the latest hellholes that we've dug. And I don't know how much more oil is left in their lamps. And some of their lamps may have gone out. And I don't know where more hope will come from if God isn't going to grant it. I believe that those foolish, hopeful, silly, procrastinating women who went out into the darkness because all they wanted to do was shine some more light for the bridegroom, I believe that they found more oil. And I believe that they are standing outside the door with their lamps lit again, because the party doesn't actually need more light. Where the light needs to be shown is into all the dark places that are anxiously, desperately, and hopefully awaiting the bridegroom. And apparently 5 women were willing to do this. And I think that's hopeful. A different type of hope that is typically raised up in this parable, but hopeful and courageous, and maybe just a little bit foolish. On a very serious note, and God knows I would love to never ever talk about another mass shooting or act of terrorism or any type of violence. But I believe that violence is a byproduct of what can happen when we don't know what else to do with our suffering, when we have lost all hope. And violence is not limited to just inflicting physical harm on others. We do violence every time we violate the sanctity of ourselves or another. And maybe that's why I don't believe those oil lamps cannot be refilled. I have to believe there's hope. I have to believe that someone is going to open that door, that someone is going to leave the party and walk into the darkness, that someone is going to call out to the bridegroom and say, hey, we're going to have to make a detour and be a bit late to the party. We've got to stop in Texas. Maybe that's why Jesus was so late. Maybe he was stopping in Texas, or Korea, or Las Vegas. Or I don't know, maybe he had to make a pit stop at the side of a suicidal person, or hold the hand of a widower, or hug someone whose pet just died. All biblical accounts point to Jesus' proclivity to detours, to dine with sinners, to heal the broken, to talk to the outcast, and even to light a lamp. And so you can tell me all you want that Jesus is going to show up at the party. But I pray that I am one of the foolish who will walk into the darkness and demand oil from the bridegroom, and then ask for the honor of lighting his path not to the party, but through the darkness, so that in Texas and everywhere else, they might proclaim, look, here comes the bridegroom.